Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Ann Pulice. Our guest is the president of the Los Angeles City Council. His leadership has helped the city navigate through some difficult situations. Joining us on set today for LA Currents, it is my pleasure to welcome Council President Paul Krekorian. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing, Ann?
Doing
It's good
well.
to be with you.
Yeah, glad to have you on. You chair an ad hoc committee on government reform. Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed 2 bills that would have required LA to create independent redistricting commission. Now, you have long believed that city governance should be in the hands of the voters of the city. So this veto puts that question to rest. You must be pleased.
Well, one way or the other, regardless of what happened in Sacramento, we were going to move forward aggressively with redistricting reform. That's been something that I've been committed to for years. Even before the scandalous recorded conversation that brought so many of these issues to the public's attention, I had already introduced a motion along with Councilmember Rahman to create an independent redistricting commission for the first time in the city's history. And so when I became council president, literally my first action was to create the Ad Hoc Committee on Governance Reform. And the first priority of that committee was to deal with independent redistricting. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done. We've had committee meetings all across the city. We've taken enormous amounts of public input and input from academic experts as well as community organizations to try to create a model for independent redistricting that's appropriate to Los Angeles and that will be fully independent, completely beyond the reach of the City Council in producing district maps, so that literally we have the people being able to decide who their elected officials should be, instead of the past model, which was very much the elected officials deciding who their voters should be. So the vetoes were good in that it was a validation, I think, of the work that we're doing here in Los Angeles, but one way or the other, we would have moved forward with this important work.
You're doing it. Independent redistricting, why is that so important for you? Why do you feel that's important?
Well, I think, you know, in order for people to have confidence in the democratic process, they need to feel that the system is not being gamed. And frankly, under the old model, it was. Too often, council members or people who wanted to be council members or people who had business before the city or any number of other interested parties could influence the way district maps were drawn, because the process we had was not independent. In the last redistricting, we had members of the commission who were lobbyists, who were people who made their living from doing business with the government, people who were in direct and regular contact with members of the council and shaping their recommendations based on the input of those members of the council. And that's not a system that engenders a lot of confidence. And when we listened to those tape recordings of that meeting at the County Federation of Labor, people were, of course, shocked by some of the racist things that were said during that conversation. But let's remember that the topic of the conversation was how to draw district lines in a way that would favor the members who were participating in that conversation, even to the point of disenfranchising entire communities within the city of Los Angeles. So that's why this was so important to fix this first. In our effort to restore the people's confidence in city government, this step had to come first.
How much will the maps change?
Well, it could be dramatic. Every 10 years, of course, when we get the results of the census in, we have to redraw these districts in order to keep them roughly equal population. Population shifts around. So the lines may change fairly dramatically or not. But the point is, it's going to be outside of the hands of the council and put into the hands of citizens who are not associated with city government to be able to draw those lines in a way that's fair, that's equitable, that recognizes the integrity of communities of interest, and enhances rather than frustrates people's ability to participate in their city government.
There is certain criteria, though, that has to be met, you know, for the districts, new or realigned. What are some of those criteria?
Yeah, and much of that is driven by constitutional concerns, and concerns that are in the Voting Rights Act and otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, so the first criteria are that the districts need to be of roughly equal size, because you want to preserve the equality of people's votes. Mm-hmm. And if one district is significantly larger than another in population, then that waters down the value of the votes in that district. So right. Keeping districts together in a way that does not disenfranchise protected communities is the first order of business. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, we've taken into account a number of other factors, or we've provided that the Independent Redistricting Commission may take into account a number of factors, like communities of interest's desire to be contained in one district. Mm-hmm. A good example is that for years, Koreatown has been asking to be put into a single district so that the influence of that community in the outcome of the elections will be enhanced. And for years, it's been divided among multiple districts. So these are the sorts of considerations that the Commission can take into account. But again, we're leaving much of the decision-making outside of those legally mandated requirements for redistricting. Outside of those, we're leaving the decisions pretty much up to the Independent Commission to decide.
There's always concerns, though, about community assets, and that just sort of goes without saying. Your stadiums, your airports, even sort of landfills are that you're dealing with that with your district. You have landfills across the street, I believe, but still you do not receive any of the community impact funds for those. Am I correct in that assumption?
You're absolutely right, and this is an issue that's been controversial within our committee. Mm-hmm. And I think really where we came down with that is we shouldn't have the kind of city governance that is broken up into 15 fiefdoms, and so that community benefits are delivered within the boundaries of those fiefdoms. We should have the kind of city government that produces benefits for the people who need them, and people who are impacted by negative sources, like you describe, a landfill or so on, or who are benefited from large economic drivers like stadiums and things. It shouldn't be, the benefit or detriment of that shouldn't be determined by the boundary line of a council district. Mm-hmm. And so while it's important to take those things into account to the extent that they impact communities of interest, for example, a historic church that's part of, what a community considers to be at its heart, we would want to keep those communities together to the extent that we can do that. Mm-hmm. But I think we want to stay away from any notion that economic assets need to be distributed out among council members. That would be not a good result. I think that would take us in the wrong direction of continuing this 15 fiefdom kind of governance that we've had.
The public tends to get impatient with how long these processes take, but there is hours of meetings, research, legal hurdles that you have to clarify and jump through. What do you wish the public was more aware of when it comes to the complexities of this notion of redistricting?
With many of the issues that we deal with, redistricting is just an example. We're a city of 4 million people with lots of different communities, with lots of different interests and goals. And if you want to take all of that into account, sometimes it's going to mean you really have to dig into details on the nuances of these policies and how they cause impacts. And too often, I think our public discourse nationally has become simplistic and binary, and it's just bumper sticker slogans, and you're either with me or you're against me. And that's nonsense, because anything that is substantive in the policy making that we're doing requires consideration of nuance and details. And that's what we've really done in this process. And I should add, I would love to have gotten finished earlier on this, but it was actually community groups that asked us to slow down so that they would have a greater opportunity to have input and to consider the suggestions that we were putting forward and to take them out to the community. That's what good policy making should be. Mm-hmm. It should be engaging the public, allowing them the time to weigh in, listening to their feedback, and then shaping the policy accordingly.
Especially when such complex issues like redistricting, it's not an easy solution in any way.
That's right.
What does redistricting do for folks who are looking to be reelected? What is it? Does it complicate matters once the redistricting is done?
Well, in my view, it should be irrelevant. Because we should redistrict according to the interests of communities, not the interests of elected officials. And so if this hurts somebody in their reelection campaign or helps somebody, that should be irrelevant to the process. We want to create fair districts that equitably include all of the communities of Los Angeles and allow their voice to be heard. And the election results, those cards will fall, however they fall, and that's what independent redistricting really should be.
And you are then a proponent for smaller districting. Is that what I'm hearing? Will there be more districts?
That is my proposal, and that has been the proposal that many of the community organizations have put to us, because the size of the Los Angeles City Council hasn't changed in 100 years. We've been 15 members since the population of the city was 1 million. And now we're at 4 million. And so that means that the value of everyone's vote has been reduced by that amount because of the increase in the population. So to empower voters more, we need smaller districts. But also, right now, with 15 seats, this is a game of musical chairs that different communities of interests have to compete for. And if we really want a city council that's reflective of the diversity of Los Angeles, we need more seats just to be able to accommodate the many voices that make up the fabric of this city.
New York City as well as Chicago each have more than 50 city council seats. The benefit of a larger council, what would that look like to you?
I think that the biggest benefit is, as I've described, to give people more power in their vote, to cause elected officials to be closer to the electorate, and to allow a greater degree of community engagement and participation in the council itself, so that we don't have communities that feel as though that they're left out.
Mm-hmm. How would those new districts then fit into the council's currently staggered election schedule?
So that's one of those really difficult, nuanced issues that that we've struggled to try to deal with, because when we expand the number of seats, we have to figure out a way to do that on the election cycle that doesn't include all of the seats. And so that's one that we're still grappling with a little bit. And actually the question of whether to expand has not fully been resolved yet by the Ad Hoc Committee. So that's one of the issues that we will be taking up and trying to resolve.
Are most people for it?
I think so, but I think there's still a lot of questions and concerns about it and what it does. And one of the ones is what you just described. How does a larger council change the nature of the council? Does it make it more like a legislative body like Congress, where the speaker has inordinate power, for example? It might. How does it change the power relationship between the council and the mayor? There are questions like that that still some members need to have resolved. Personally, while I'm supporting smaller districts and a larger council, At the same time, I've argued that my own power as council president should actually be reduced. As part of my reform agenda, I want to find ways to reduce the power of the council president. And there's a question of whether or not, if you get too big, that increases the power of the council president, like the Speaker of the House or the Speaker of the Assembly.
Why would you want it reduced?
Because I think that as we move forward in trying to reduce the risk of and perception of corruption, the potential for corruption, you want to reduce the power that any individual person has, whether it's the council president, whether it's the chair of a committee. We want to make sure that decisions are made by the body and not by an individual person. So that's the main reason.
Would term lengths in some of the districts then have to be adjusted? Have you looked at that?
That might be one of the solutions, but again, it's a complicated and difficult decision that we really haven't settled on a complete solution for.
Okay. So among all these challenges that you've been in these meetings, and of course there's been lots of discussion about this very thing, what's the one thing that stands out in your mind that keeps you up at night, that makes you go, I don't know? Is there anything that is top of mind for you that's very concerning when redistricting or adding seats?
Well, not with redistricting. I am completely confident that we've produced a terrific policy recommendation for the council on independent redistricting, and I'm very proud that we're doing this for the first time in 100 years. With council expansion, yeah, it does keep me up a little bit, because I can make the arguments for why this is a good idea, but this is a big change, and there are good arguments on the other side as to concerns that people have, and so I'm committed to seeing this process through. I fully hope that we will have a proposal for the voters for the 2024 election, but we do have a number of hurdles still to go through before I think there's consensus around this.
Is the 2024 election a reality?
Yes.
That's what you're shooting for?
Yes, for sure redistricting will be on the November 2024 ballot. I guarantee that. Okay. With regard to council size, I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that simultaneously on the November ballot as well.
So the two are not mutually inclusive?
They're not. They're related. They're certainly related, but we deliberately designed the redistricting proposal in a way that it could move forward independently of whether or not we decide to move forward on the council expansion issue.
Okay. Now, you, Mayor Bass, and a delegation of council members spent some time in our nation's capital. The LA Department of Water and Power will receive $48 million in a federal grant to expand and strengthen the clean energy that we're all going for here. Now, more specifically, how's that grant money actually going to be used? Well,
this is a really important step forward. As I'm sure you know, the DWP is on track right now, thanks to the LA 100 program that I initiated about 7 years ago now. We are on track to achieve 100% clean energy by the year 2035. That is a monumentally difficult task to achieve. And what we're doing through LA 100 is really the model for the rest of the nation as the largest municipally owned utility in the country. Part of the challenge in doing that is ensuring grid reliability as you're moving towards a greater reliance on renewable energy in particular, much of which is intermittent. Solar, wind, these are intermittent sources of electricity, and you have to ensure grid reliability through things like controlling the demand curve, providing for more storage, and so on. And this grant will help in that reliability part of it. So it'll help us with our commitment to EV charging, to smart metering, to advancing storage capacity for renewable electricity. Those sorts of things. $48 million will be a big, big help.
When you say control the demand curve, specifically what is that?
Well, right now, electricity use in Los Angeles, like everywhere else, is very spiky.
Yeah.
So during the day, when offices are open and things, it's very high. When people first get home from work and flip on the air conditioning, particularly in the summer, it's extremely high. At night, it's not. So we need to figure out a way to balance out, to smooth out some of those spikes. And that's what we do with altering the demand curve. So when you have smart metering, for example, it's a way to encourage people to not turn on the washing machine until after 8 p.m., say, and those sorts of things. It's a way that you can change consumer behavior to smooth out those spikes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and 100% clean energy, what does that mean? I mean, you mentioned a few things, but overall, how do you do 100% clean energy? That's daunting.
It's extremely daunting, and it means fundamentally rethinking how our utility will deliver power. And I'm so pleased that when we initiated this process 7 years ago now, the DWP really embraced it, because I expected much more resistance. But I think some of the people who've spent their entire professional careers in figuring out how to deliver power to the people of Los Angeles, I think they saw it as a real challenge. And it became kind of like when NASA was committed to putting an astronaut on the moon. It became their moonshot. And I'm so pleased that working with the National Renewable Energy Lab, we've created literally the model for the country. Mm-hmm. And it will involve significantly increasing electrification of the transportation sector, of the built environment, so that we can do this in a way that's cost effective. So we'll actually, it seems counterintuitive, but we need to generate much more electricity and use much more electricity in order to achieve 100% clean energy. And that's part of what this grant is all about as well.
Now, you've been a long-time advocate for expanding the rail and bus transit systems in the Valley, including electrifying and eventually converting the G line to light rail. That falls right directly into this whole topic right here. Where does that stand now?
It does, and I should say Measure M was a real game changer for transportation in Southern California. Metro, I also serve on the board of Metro. We're now engaged in the largest investment in transportation infrastructure in the nation, and we're going to continue to be for decades to come thanks to Measure M. And it was especially important for the San Fernando Valley, which was largely left out of the benefits of Measure R. So Measure M significantly changed that. And the Orange Line, the G Line, as you mentioned, the East Valley light rail line, building transit through the Sepulveda Pass, the connection between North Hollywood and Pasadena, all of these are things that are going to really benefit the people of the Valley thanks to Measure M. And one of the things you mentioned was the improvements to the G Line. This is the most successful BRT right now, a bus rapid transit line in the country. And what we've done is already begun investment on improvements to the system as it is. So through grade separation and other things, we're working right now to increase the reliability and the capacity of the G line, and also speeding it up. So those things are already underway. We've electrified the system already. It's all electric buses on the line. And then the next step will be, and this is down the road a little bit, but the next step will be, once all those improvements are in place, actually converting to light rail. Yeah. But all of those are really important steps forward for transit and for the environment, and for the economy as well.
Right. You and Council Member Hugo Soto Martinez introduced a motion to eliminate the non-vending zone on Hollywood Boulevard that's been in place since 2018. What's next if that motion passes?
Well, it's a good question, and part of it remains to be seen, because we're studying something new, which is creating, instead of a no vending zone, a special vending zone for Hollywood Boulevard. That's because of the unique nature of Hollywood Boulevard, and it's such a tourist attraction. There is a need for people to be able to sell there, but at the same time, there's lots of public safety concerns that we have to take into account. So Mr. Soto Martinez is proposing a special vending zone, which we're looking to explore how we can do that in a way that protects the vendors and protects the public and prevents traffic dangers and that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's sort of moved from a no vending to a special vending.
That's right.
Okay.
And we still have a long ways to go. There's going to be reports back. There's going to be analysis of how you create that kind of a system, but that's now underway.
Do you have a blueprint to follow with that type of system? Are you looking towards some other cities that have the same challenges as Los Angeles? How they're handling it?
That will. I always hope that when we look at changes, we don't reinvent the wheel. I always think that it's valuable for policymakers to look at what the best practices are. So for sure we'll be looking at other cities' examples and see if there are some that provide helpful information for us to use. In many ways, Los Angeles is a unique animal. I mean, we're the second largest city in America, and you really can't compare us to smaller cities around California. But I do think that we always have things that we can learn from the previous experience of other cities. All
right, what is on the council's upcoming agenda? Anything you want to share with us?
Well, you know, every day is an adventure. I will say this, I'm really so proud of this council and how far we've come in the last year. We were facing such a difficult challenge in the aftermath of those tape-recorded meetings, in the aftermath of indictments and convictions of former members of the council. This council was facing tremendous crisis, and we've turned a page. We have 7 brand new council members who haven't served in public office before. 7 out of the 15. We have the most diverse council in the history of the city of Los Angeles. I was able to appoint the first committee in the history of Los Angeles that is an all-woman committee, for example. So we have this incredible opportunity of turning the page on the crisis of a year plus ago and really moving forward with a council that is looking to the future, moving forward, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. When I took over as council president, there was some question whether we would even be able to have functional council meetings. The protests were so great and the disruption was so great. Understandably, people were enraged by what they had heard and what they saw happening. And I'm so proud of the council that we have turned the corner on that, and we're moving forward with really important legislation and with kind of a new beginning for the council and governance in Los Angeles.
You feel you have restored some trust in the city council in a year and a half time?
Certainly some. It's always going to be a work in progress, and this has to be mission number 1 for every elected official, because if you don't have the trust of the public, you won't be able to effectively function in delivering good policy. And I think we have done a lot when it comes to policy. I mentioned some of the work that's been going on with LA 100. We were able to succeed in prohibiting oil and gas drilling in Los Angeles for the first time in our history, protecting neighborhoods that have been impacted by that industry for generations now. We moved forward with the strongest tenant protection program that has ever happened in the history of the city and setting a national standard. We're working to increase our housing stock, in particular our affordable housing stock, which is helping our economy to recover, and locking arms with the mayor around some of those issues with her ED1 and the work that we've done in the council. We've substantially reduced the time that it takes to get affordable housing built. So there's a lot of good work that's being done in the council, and we're taking on tough challenges, and we're effective in doing it.
Thank you, Council President Krekorian. We were so glad to have you on today. And that's a wrap on LA Currents.